All right, welcome everybody to our latest Live Motocross podcast as we talk all things Paris Supercross, the upcoming AUSX Open, and maybe a little bit of World Supercross with Jason Thomas. Before we get started, firstly, thank you to everyone for listening and supporting the website and these podcasts. It's greatly appreciated. We'd also like to thank our sponsors for this one in Fly Racing and Firepower, starting with Fly Racing, who have recently dropped their 2026 range, which raises the bar once again for performance and design. Built with championship proven technology, the new collection is all about control, comfort, and confidence on any track in any conditions. Leading the charge with the Formula S, the world's first off road smart helmet. It's a game changer and a bold statement of Fly Racing's commitment to innovation. Ready to ride? Check out the full 2026 line at flyracing.com or your local dealers. Follow at flyracing.global on social media and cheer on all the athletes at events across the globe. All right, welcome again, JT. How's life? And thanks for joining us, mate. Fresh from Paris Supercross was a massive weekend, another big stop on the calendar for your pretty relentless schedule, mate. So, how was it for you and all things Paris? It was a pretty awesome event, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was all good. I had a great time, honestly. Just kind of doing the thing, it's such a whirlwind. I was in Florida when we spoke last with all the, Feld meetings and kind of getting dialed in for the new season. And then I went straight to Europe from there. And then, they were already midstream with the event. So I was just trying to kind of play catch up a bit with them. And like when I landed, they were already on, like there were bikes on track for media day, and I'm just like coming in hot, right? I got bags and I'm like, I'm here, like what are we doing? And I didn't I didn't feel great. It's like middle of the afternoon because I'd flown like the last flight out of Atlanta to Paris. So I was a hot mess. But yeah, once I got some sleep, which was sparse to say the least, on Friday night, just jet lag. And anybody who's traveled internationally kind of knows how that goes. You just wake up in the middle of the night for no reason at all, other than your body tells you you're waking up now. And but yeah, I mean, I have no complaints. I had a great time. It was my first time to that arena. Eric Pernard puts on such a fantastic event. And yeah, so my end of it, not that anybody really cares, was great. I enjoyed my time. I'm glad I went, even though it's challenging. It's challenging to turn and burn like that in a couple days, and try to feel like a human being.
Yeah, mate, definitely hit the ground running there, and it's always a great event. It was cool to hear you in the commentary booth with Paul and a host of other guests too, which was really awesome to hear those conversations, with guys like Clout and Hurlings and Hogmo and many more. It's a good bit of banter. Even Steve from Pulp MX was in there for quite a bit, so that's something quite fun as well, mate. And you always enjoy the commentary, don't you, to mix it up a bit to accompany the usual SMX work.
No, it was cool. It was fun to have Steve in there. I don't really, I do so many things with him, on and off air. We, talking not necessarily one on one, but in group text pretty much all day. But that on air commentary was kind of a new thing for us. Like that was a new dynamic. So it was just an interesting thing to do. I know him so well. It's same as Weege. I almost know what they're going to say before they say it. It's like being married. You can kind of finish each other's sentences because you know their perspective, you know their personality, you know how they view most things. So it's a really comfortable kind of situation. But again, it was still a new one, to be watching bikes on track and to kind of be conversing. And then, Paul kind of controls the conversation. Like he's used to being by himself. So his demeanor and his natural move is to kind of control things, which I am obviously I'm fine with. And I kind of know his cadence. So having three in the booth with someone who is used to dominating is an interesting dynamic. But yeah, I think we made the most of it, and I know all three of us really enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. There's some really cool conversations that sort of go down there because there's sort of lots of downtime from the racing with all the events and the promotional stuff that they go on, and it gives you that chance to have the guests. So, yeah, no, definitely a cool event, mate. And I'm sure you'll be back in future years. And to talk about the actual racing, I guess we'll start with the track, mate. There's some pretty solid set of whoops they had there and some pretty cool rhythms. A few different things guys were able to sort of launch into. Did you like the layout? Were you sort of personally keen to get out there and spin some laps, mate? It looked sort of pretty slick and hard in sections, like pretty solid test for the riders, all things considered. So, just your thoughts on it from being there and talking to people.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely said it. The track was harder as far as dirt composition than I think most people would associate with Paris. And I don't know, it's been in that arena for 7 years, minus COVID, I think something like that. I don't know if that's always the same dirt. My last time there was Bercy, which has been, man, 15 years, which is crazy. But Bercy was really sticky, a lot more traction than what this arena had. So I don't know if it's the same dirt or not. As we know with all supercrosses and arena crosses, the weather leading in is a huge determining factor in what you're going to get, right? If there's a ton of precipitation the week of the load in, you're going to have a softer, more sticky racetrack. If it's been dry and they did a great job of covering it, it's hard going in and they have to add water, you're going to get a hard packed version of this. And that's a consistent theme throughout. But yeah, it was slippery. I mean, you saw guys losing the front end consistently. Jet Lawrence in the Super Pole was a great example of that. And you could just see guys like constantly searching for traction all weekend long. I mean, Jet lost the front twice, one on Super Pole and then one in one of the races entering the whoops, which is pretty atypical for him. He's usually very precise with the front, but I also think they were running incredibly aggressive front tires because they were thinking European Supercross. And when you couple one of the most aggressive options you have with a really hard base and really stiff front end suspension, yeah, losing the front end is going to be pretty commonplace.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely looked like, yeah, there's a few nasty ones for sure. And yeah, there's a few uncharacteristic crashes, like you mentioned as well. But I guess the best person to start with would be Mookie. How good was he from your perspective, mate? Obviously, you said it was the best riding you've ever seen in that review podcast with Steve. So he was definitely on rails. He was absolutely elite in those whoops, making up a lot of ground and just pretty much brilliant all over the track, not just isolated to the whoops. So he said heading in, what did he say? He rode 6 times. So he definitely looked like he was having fun. What he won 4 of the 6 mains, and I guess you can't really draw too many conclusions from this one. These off-season races is what you always say, but I guess he can carry some pretty good momentum into the pre-season training and into the A1, which is sort of coming up quicker than we all think, I think, mate. But yeah, not bad considering he said he was undercooked, wasn't it, mate?
Well, it's pretty incredible that he can have that type of form with not riding very much. And, that's a very individual and unique experience for everybody. Some people can get away with that. They don't need to ride a lot, especially if they kind of have their base fitness, which of course he did from an entire season. They can come in and perform really well. I was not that way. I needed to ride a lot. And if I didn't practice a lot, it really would show up on race day. I just know that. I know myself. I have tons of examples of it going that way. So for me, it's hard to wrap my head around how he could be that good, kind of. I don't want to say unprepared because that's not fair, but really kind of unprepared. Not his fault. He's dealing with an injury, but if you're comparing that to like an A1 scenario, you would say it's unprepared. But that's the best I've ever seen him look, and you can say it was the whoops. You can say whatever you want, but for me, it was the entire package because his starts were great, especially on Saturday, the first night. His pace was great. He was mistake free. He was incredibly good in the whoops. Like there was really no hole in his game whatsoever. There was no fitness concern. There was really nothing of concern at all. And the only time he really didn't win was when Jet got out front and he got a bad start. And even then, he closed the gap down. Like he truly closed the gap down on Jet. And Jet managing a race is nothing new. But at the same time, Malcolm closing down the gap on Jet, that is kind of something new. So I don't back away from saying it's the best I've ever seen him look. Everybody's going to point towards Tampa. Sure, I understand that argument. I'm not saying that they're wrong. It's just when you couple all of the things together over the entire course of 2 full days of racing, I really never saw a flaw in his game whatsoever. In Tampa, I saw 21 minutes of fabulous riding, like incredibly good riding, but it was kind of out of nowhere. Like, yeah, the main was good, but I didn't really see that anywhere else. It wasn't like he was the fastest in qualifying all day and then he crushed his heat race and then he went out there and closed Chase down in the main. Like that's not what happened. This this type of weekend in Paris is, outside of qualifying on Saturday and one main event where Jet kind of got out front and gone, and then one main event where Mookie was catching him. it was a perfect weekend, truly a perfect weekend for Malcolm. So yeah, I kind of stand by it. It was like one of those weekends, and I've had them. Most racers are going to say like you could point to a weekend where just everything went right. You couldn't put a foot wrong. That was this type of weekend for Malcolm.
Yeah, it definitely bodes well for him heading in. And yeah, sort of the staying power for six motos just to get the job done, really. So impressive and obviously deserved King of Paris winner for sure. And you mentioned Jet as well. Obviously, not the weekend he wanted, but, largely stock bikes obviously had their own components and stuff and certain things, but just didn't look as comfortable as usual, like you mentioned. And I guess how much of an impact would that have? Probably quite a substantial one, just looking at the results and how he was throughout the weekend. Obviously, the handling and everything's just a little bit different and just not as comfortable, but he was still ripping that big quad, mate. He had some nice lines, and you can see the talent on show. Like we always say, he's willing to experiment even when he's not got everything completely as he would like it. So, aside from the uncharacteristic crashes and Vial hitting him out of control, I suppose for both the Lawrence brothers, it was good to get through that weekend unscathed and head to the AUSX Open, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think for Jet, it was a tough weekend, and the unanswerable question, unless you're inside his own head, is what factor do we, or what, power do we associate to not having his full race bike, right? Like, was it the most critical factor? Was it just a small inconvenience? We don't really know. We don't really have any evidence to say, well, in this scenario, when he's on that bike, this is what you can expect. Like he's on that bike like once or twice a year, if that, like it's hardly ever. I would say the closest really example we have would be either this race last year or Australia last year. And the results in both of those were really hit and miss. They were not consistent. He had one crash and then he won out, but it wasn't like domination in Paris last year. And then Australia was not anything to write home about either. Crash, tough weekend. So I would give it a very incomplete score as far as what does the factory equipment mean. But if you were just going on a binary metric, it's not great. Like it's not a net positive, that's for damn sure, because the only evidence we have to go off of are, I would say, far from average scores from him over the three that I can recall immediately. And he'll have another shot at it this week in Australia. Will give us more evidence of it. But yeah, a very atypical weekend for Jet overall, I thought.
Yeah, absolutely. And the same would be said for Hunter as well. That huge crash in the whoops. Obviously, thankfully, he wasn't too badly hurt, but it looked like a nasty one. You saw the helmet damage was pretty insane. But other than that, just pretty consistent. Just rode that Sunday smart and like the veteran he is, even though he's not that old, but he sort of races and approaches things like a veteran. But you're hearing Steve talking to Dazzy, it looks like they won't do these races next year. So do you think that's a wise move to take a break, even though the money's nice? It looks like from what they were saying, they'll just do the nations and then have a break and then get into a sort of proper testing period, as well as obviously, yeah, adjusting to whatever they need to and just making the fine tune to the program for 2027. So just your take on Hunter and that approach.
Yeah, I'm torn on that. They make a lot of money, especially Jet. He's going to be up there with some of the highest paid guys ever. And I don't know that he's there yet. Like the industry is just not in a position as far as spending that it once was, but he's making a lot of money, somewhere between 7 and 10 million a year, assuming all things go well and race wins and titles and all those things. So is, like a $200,000 payday before expenses worth this, and you couple that with Australia. Let's say he's making anywhere from 250 to 350,000 between these two weekends. I think that's a fair assessment. Maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like if you say 250K, you're going to be safe. That's what he's making over this, 2 week adventure that he's on right now. If you're making 8 million, is it worth it? That's something that everybody's going to have a different answer for. For me, it would be yes, because I don't know what it's like to make $10 million. And money is a very, very relative thing, right? Ricky Carmichael, when he was making that type of money, you couldn't pay him enough to go race a race like Paris. Like they tried to pay him enough, and he always declined because it wasn't worth it for him. He wanted the time off, he wanted to prepare, and he wanted to focus his efforts on winning races and championships in America. And I've talked to him about this a lot. I've talked to Ryan Villapoto a lot. RV had a little bit of a different take. Like he wanted to do Australia in the winter of 2010, and I was there practicing with him a lot, and they offered him 180,000 to go down there and race two races. And he was going to have to be there about 3 weeks total between coming in, being there for 2 weeks, two races, and then getting out, media events, whatever. And he was going back and forth with Alden because he's like, 180 grand is a lot of money, right? And I think this is 15 years ago, and this is on the back of the great financial crisis. So it was a tough time money wise for the sport in general. And I was racing, so I knew it all too well. And Alden's like, listen, if you focus and you lock in those 3 weeks here, you're going to have that money covered before we're halfway through January, right? And you don't have to jeopardize the other millions that are in play the rest of the months down the road. If you go down there and you miss days of riding and you're jet lagged and who knows what's going to happen at these races? Let's assume you don't get hurt. Let's even take that off the table. I can't guarantee you that you're going to be 100% prepared for the season. I can't. As a trainer, I can't. With that wrench thrown into the program, I can't guarantee it. And that's what I'm worried about is you risking whatever it is, 2 million in earnings between race wins and title for 180,000. Like that is not a good gamble. And in the end, Alden's argument won out. RV didn't go. And the only point I'm trying to make is that is always going to be an individual decision. And how much do you value that immediate payday? Right now, and I can tell you, Hunter very much values it. Like he wants to make the money. Cooper Webb very much values it. He wants to make the money. Not everybody views it the same way. Look at Chase Sexton. He never races these races, ever. Like he does not race these races, period. And that's the division there. That is the difference in opinion about what these races mean and how much the money means. So I'll be curious to see if Jet and Hunter hold true to that and they don't race them. I kind of think as they start to make more money, it is the right move to avoid them. I really do. Because let's think about their schedule for a second. They raced the playoffs. They maybe took a couple days off, and then they were straight into Motocross of Nations mode. I don't even think they rode much before Motocross of Nations, to be honest. Then they have basically a month is really all you have. Now, is a month a lot of time? It sounds like a lot of time, but you have to remember that for the month of October, that's a really critical time for the OEM to test anything new. Because what happens is they go test things that are possible usage in the following season. And the things that are going to work, and they're like, hey, we need to have these on hand. This is a great option in these conditions, blah, blah, blah. They make this huge list. They submit that to vendors, to Japan, to part suppliers in the US and say, hey, we need these built. But that testing process has to happen in October to give those suppliers time to build those products. If you don't get that testing done in October and early November, they simply don't have enough time to provide the new stuff for January. Think about Honda at the beginning of 2025 when they were struggling with chassis on the 2025 Honda in Supercross. They were kind of, and this is kind of Lars's verbiage, they were piecing together things to make it work because they simply didn't have the things they wanted. And that is a byproduct of this process. You need to be ahead of the game testing wise, get the order in, and then you're prepared for whatever may come in January. So point being, you can't just take the month of October off. It sounds great. It sounds like everybody does that. That's not what happens. They were riding. I was talking to people there. They were testing. Is it motoing down? Like, no, it's not. But you need to go through this laundry list of items that are potential new pieces they built. This is new pathways. Like we've come up with these ideas. We need to test for the new season. That takes time. That means long days at the test track. So the resting, the time off is simply not happening. Like they're still at the track. They're still kind of grinding these days out. You get into November and now you're thinking about boot camp, which they don't even really do because of their schedule. You're thinking about Paris. You're thinking about Australia. You've got to kind of put some laps in a little bit. Like you need to be like race ready somewhat. So all of this entire kind of monologue I'm on right now leads to the question of, when are you really supposed to rest and recharge the batteries? Like when is that time supposed to happen? It's really not there for when you race twice in November, that time's not there. Is the point I'm trying to make, where guys like AP, guys like Tomac, they took time off. Like they like, and you could even kind of throw Tomac out because he's doing these WSX things. Let's say Sexton. Sexton's the perfect example. It's the same thing Carmichael used to do. They were doing the bare minimum in October. Like, okay, we have to test some, but they weren't worried about racing in November. Like that was not a thing. They didn't have to constantly have this in the back of their mind. Well, like I got to be sharp because I'm gonna have to go race on a big stage in November. He didn't care because he could just chill. Yeah, man, what are we testing today? Cool. You guys done? Okay, I'm done too. If you're done with me, I'm done. And that's not like how it normally goes. But in October, that's how he could approach it. These other guys have way too much other to worry about racing in November to allow that to happen. So I think when Dazzy says, "Hey, we're going to probably not do this," I think he's looking at the workload and the cumulative effect it has on them and how prepared they can be for January by adding those what seemingly two innocent races in November. I think the like beneath the surface effect is far more impactful than what it would seem like.
Yeah, that's really great insight, quality analysis there on that situation. It's a really interesting topic, and obviously with series like AUSX and WSX and all those European races like Paris and the ones in Germany or wherever really, I guess it's sort of, do you reckon that leans more into guys just doing Supercross only? And obviously, but then again with the SMX points, that's brought a lot more impetus into pro motocross as well to bank those points. And you can't really, it's tough to have a mid-season break per se if you're only doing Supercross only and to do some of that testing because your teams are usually invested elsewhere, doing the pro motocross, for example. So it's an interesting sort of conundrum how teams and riders are going to face that in the future, isn't it?
Yeah, and I don't really foresee the Supercross only thing being a factor for anyone really but Cooper Webb. If you told me that Cooper Webb in the next 24 months was Supercross only, that wouldn't surprise me in the least. But I think for the rest of these guys, they're so competent, and they're young. Hunter and Jett are young, Sexton's young. I think Tomac would just exit stage left, right? He's too good at outdoors. I think he likes pro motocross because he can win. I don't think he would just go supercross only. Like that's not really his MO. So I don't think it's going to be really a factor for anybody but Webb. But I do think that is coming. I think that will be a thing soon.
Yeah, it's very interesting, isn't it, mate? And obviously, on the topic of Webb, he was a defending champion heading in. He's usually pretty smart and a wily character when approaching these things, not doing anything too outside of his comfort zone, really. The fly kit looked excellent, mate, and just solid yet unspectacular, really, wasn't it, mate? More prep. Obviously, he's going to be racing that WSX round coming up and just making strides, getting competitive action. That's what it's all about for him. He doesn't need to show that blistering speed just yet. And yeah, still led some laps. And yeah, just your thoughts on the Crafty Veterans weekend, mate. Made some good money, played it smart. He knows what the priorities are at this point of career. So some nice takeaways for him there, wasn't it?
Yeah, I wrote for Racerhead that'll come out on Friday on RacerX Online. It was just kind of a steady Eddie weekend. There was really no outlier events, no crashes, really, nothing really to write home about other than like, if it was like a old war letter that you see, it would be like all is well on the front, like it was fine. Good starts, good pace, good fitness. Could have been better? Yes. Did he get dropped by Jett and Malcolm several times? Also, yes. So I just think it was kind of middle of the road. Like Steve and Kiefer would say, it was just a five. It was okay, acceptable on the podium. Really, all weekend. Second the first night, second overall for the weekend. Like if you were wanting a ho hum, let's go make 100 grand weekend, that was probably it. I do think he was battling the motorcycle a little bit, and I've been in this exact spot in Bercy, which and I know this is a different arena, but the same damn race. When you go there and you don't have your suspension tech, if you need to make internal significant changes, you really don't have a way to do it because you definitely can't allow some outside supplier to open up your suspension. That is a hard no. So you really don't have any maneuverability at all. And I think that's what he was wanted to make a change. I think he probably wanted to, either because of the really hard dirt or because the whoops were so big, but something was bugging him, and they didn't have the capabilities to change it. Same thing happened to me 2010, end of '09 in Bercy. I had just switched to factory connection. My setup was really good for Montreal, but Bercy whoops are really big. My forks were way too soft. I didn't have an out. I actually called and asked Ziggy, who now works with Ducati and that team, hey, like I have a problem. And he's like, you cannot open that, and you cannot let anybody else open it. And it's like, okay, well, this is going to be really difficult. And I remember telling Eric Pennard, who was a promoter, I'm like, hey, I'm not going to be very good because I had just won Montreal the weekend before. And I'm like, hey, I'm not going to be very good this weekend. Like my suspension is way too soft and I'm not allowed to make the change that I need to make. So I'm apologizing in advance that I'm not going to be my best self. But yeah, it's tough. Like I'm getting beaten and not performing the way I need to. So you kind of have to just swallow your pride a little bit and understand that this is not indicative of what you could be doing. But that's hard to do when you have adrenaline and you're being paid to do a job and there's a ton of people around and kind of like other riders and mechanics are like, hey man, what are you doing? I'm just like, you just there's nothing, again, it's a pride thing, but it's really difficult to kind of just take it in stride and go with it.
Yeah, that's really cool insight, mate. Must have been a challenging weekend, that one for sure. And I guess Vial, onto him now, the Frenchman. Obviously, cool to see him on that, 450 HRC. Quite the introduction to 450 Supercross in some ways there. He had a few moments, didn't he? That one with Jet, obviously, springs to mind. But yeah, pretty cool for him to get that kind of a race under the belt on home soil in front of the fans on his return to Europe. Obviously, he'll be racing MXGP in that setup, mate. So, did you get to catch up with him? Just any thoughts on Vial? And I guess expectations went a little bit high when people saw that video pre-race, but obviously, yeah, about where most people expected he ended up was where he sort of ended up, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I mean, I think it was just one of those weekends where you got what you expected. It wasn't anything kind of outside of the norm.
Yeah, did what he had to do, mate. Last couple of questions, mate. Obviously, 250. Bourdon won the Prince of Paris, and obviously, Clout got second. The Aussie, really cool for him. And it was cool to get your thoughts in the booth with him when he came in, talking about how he was adjusting to the 250 and he was sort of riding 450 lines. And you were talking about a few different topics like the whoops and stuff like that. So that was pretty cool to get that insight, which is a nice thing for the broadcast, mate. And he'll be loading up again for AUSX this weekend, mate. So he's a good case. Obviously, raced Stuttgart the week before, didn't he? Race Paris back to Australia. It's a good chance to make some money for these guys, isn't it?
Yeah, it was the kind of Prince of Paris thing was for me. I thought the lineup was underwhelming to be completely honest with you. That race has a lot of heritage, and there have been some really heavy hitters come through that particular event. So, I don't know if it was a budget thing, right? When you have Webb, Jet, and Hunter, you've soaked up a lot of budget between those three. You probably just spent $500,000 to get them there. So I'm guessing that was the reason why the lineup was super light in SX2 is they just didn't have the money to go pay, 30 or 40 grand for a Shimoda or, like Vial would be the obvious one, but he moved up. And like I kind of skipped over Vial a little bit. It just was super underwhelming. I don't really have a lot to kind of lean on with Vial. Like I tell you what, I was really frustrated with a post that I saw, and I mentioned this on Steve review with Steve, and they were kind of like, Vial looked good on this video, and they're like, like, are people gonna be like regretting not signing him? And I wanted to write no. Like I was just like, no, they're not because cool, man. Yeah, he looks really good on this video. But guess what? Everybody does on video at their track. They look amazing. They're the best riders in the world. Like this is completely irrelevant. And maybe it was just clickbait, right? Trying to emote a response. That's fine. It kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Um, but he was fine. Like he's not racing Supercross. It was his first weekend on the bike. It was his first weekend on a 450. Like it was very, very average, honestly. And when you get beat by Suberis in the overall, like that's all you really need to know. Like that's all I really need to say is he got beaten over the course of 2 days by Cedric Suberis. And that's not a slight against Subs at all. But Tom Vial is a factory Honda racer with multiple titles on multiple continents, right? So that's kind of just where I'll leave it. But back to the Prince of Paris thing, it was fine. I just, the battle at the front was okay. They gave at least gave us something, but again, I just felt like it was a down year for Prince of Paris overall. Clout performed. Really got screwed by in the second to last race. Wasn't his fault. I didn't remember who it was, but I don't know if it was Suleimani or somebody completely came back to the left on him, and then Bourdon had nowhere to go and ran over him on top of it. But like either one of those guys could have won, and you would have said they were deserving of it. It just so happened that Bourdon was able to avoid the pivotal incident, and Luke Clout wasn't. But they were so far ahead of everybody else. Even Calvin, who's leading SX2 tour. It was kind of a runaway show between those two.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. And just before we wrap up, two more questions. Obviously, just start out with a bit of WSX. Tomac on the KTM, the debut. Obviously, very impressive. He was a big draw card for that event, and the track looked like it was a pretty big test for a lot of those dudes, but hard to make early judgments, mate. But your take, were you impressed with Tomac? And obviously, he had a pretty cool battle with Roxon there as well. So yeah, that's good for the series there, and they're sort of going toe to toe. And they're trying to get some impetus into it. They've got Deegan obviously in the opener, and then there's a couple of other guys coming. Deegan will be back, and then there's some big hitters coming to the Gold Coast round. So I guess not fully invested in the results, but the riding was pretty good in many ways for Tomac, and he looked pretty comfortable. So good first start, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I was very impressed with Tomac, but in the same breath, if I was typing this, it would be in the same sentence. I thought he would be really good this weekend because I've raced this race. Not obviously it was 20 years ago, but same dirt, same stadium, same dynamics. So I have a very strong inclination of what it was going to be like. And Eli is a guy that he wants to be aggressive. His riding style begs to let him be aggressive with the throttle, with the clutch, attack the racetrack. When he has to kind of baby around it and be super finesse on the track, that's not really his thing. He wants to, I don't even say override it, but he wants to be on the aggressive side of a racing profile. This track allows that. It's kind of like this really soft, loose dirt that allows him to be really heavy-handed with the throttle. So I kind of thought that would work for him. And kind of the opposite of that is Roxon. Like Roxon rode really well, don't get me wrong, but think about in Argentina how good Roxon was on a super slippery, super technical. You had to be like crazy light on the throttle. Those are the things that Roxon excels at. So I thought Tomac would be better in this scenario simply because of the setup, even though it was his first race on the new bike. And that's kind of how it played out. Not that I, know all these things. It's just when you kind of throw all these variables in, and what do these guys do well? What kind of tracks are going to be? And we've seen this play out before between those two. Typically, Tomac gets the better of Kenny. Also, like that's somewhere in this stew of prediction that we're making. But yeah, I think Eli will be very good in those types of scenarios when the track works with him, when he feels comfortable. He's going to be great. It's the weekends where things are a little bit dicey, like the track's tricky. It's mixed conditions, like a wet and soft Anaheim, where it's slippery yet spongy, and the bumps are really strange. That's where I think he's going to be like, man, I can't figure out where to go with the bike. I don't have enough data. I've never dealt with this on this bike, on this track, and these conditions, and they're going to be chasing it. And typically, when Eli's not feeling it and he's chasing settings, he's not his best self. That's just been his MO his entire career. And that doesn't mean he's going to get 17th. It just means he's going to be fifth or he's going to be eighth. And there's going to be some head scratching going on. And he's going to simply say, hey, I couldn't come to grips with the bike. Track was a little weird. The bike's new, the team's new, the staff's new, and we were just a little bit off. You're going to hear that, I believe, at certain times in 2026. Is it going to be all the time? No, it's not. But you will hear that. I firmly believe that. So just keep that in mind because I've seen like people going crazy. Like, he's going to dominate. Maybe he does a few races. Like truly, maybe he does. But there will be weekends where, you kind of see after the race, he and his dad and the mechanic staring at the motorcycle, like they're having, deep in conversation about where do we go wrong with the setup this weekend that didn't allow us to be our best. That's a normal dynamic for most everybody. I just think Eli late in his career on a brand new team on an Austrian chassis with new staff that he's never worked with. Like I think that's a reasonable expectation to come at times. And so the question for him will be when you think big picture and championship, can he limit that weekend enough? Can he win when the weekends he's feeling it, like San Diego 25? And can he mitigate any damage that would be caused on that type of weekend and turn what would be in his historical racing career, that could be a seventh or a ninth, even going back to Cowie days, can he make that like a fourth? If he can, then I think he can be in the championship fight. If he can't, then it's going to be tough because you're going to be dealing with guys like if Jet's on and he's healthy, he doesn't give you much room for mistakes like that. He doesn't give you much room for off nights. And that's not even talking about Webb or Sexton. We'll see how he'll be. Jet's probably going to, or excuse me, Hunter's probably going to be his best self ever. So that to me, if I was coaching Eli, I would say, okay, I know you're going to be great on certain nights. I know you're freaking Eli Tomac, but these other nights, we really, really need to make sure that we're our best self. And I'm not saying your bad nights you got to win, but if things aren't going well and you're like want to punch your handlebars in the middle of the main event, you've got to focus and lock in and get every single point and position possible. Like that is going to me, that's really what it comes down to, and that will be the difference. Barring injuries, barring craziness, to me, that's where his championship chances lie in that really small zone of the bad nights.
Yeah, that's a great overview and insight and analysis on sort of what will be coming up for him and the challenges he'll face. And we definitely look forward to watching that with interest. And just lastly, little AUSX Open preview, mate. Obviously, the Lawrence brothers will be looking for better fortunes after Paris. They mix the ups and the downs, and it's a pretty big event for the Aussie moto scene, mate. And there's obviously a lot of heavy hitters like AC and JB, Steve Lewis from the Moto Media / ex riders going there. So that'll be good. The spotlight's on Australia the next 2 weekends, isn't it? With AUSX, then WSX. So be interesting to see how Lawrence brothers approach it. Obviously, they'll enjoy it, spend time with the local fans, and I guess probably won't have too much of a bearing on 2026. But it's an exciting event. It's going to be a strong entry list with obviously the Lawrence brothers, Subaras, Walsh, Wilson, Nicoletti, Clout, these kind of guys, mate. So you'll be tuning in with interest.
Yeah, I can't wait to watch it. It's going to be great. Like you have AUSX, you have all the superstars coming in, you have the battle for the championship going on as well. So yeah, I think it's going to be a fantastic event. And then we have the Australia WSX round coming up as well. I want to really see how Deegs turns it around. He posted a video about an hour ago. We're recording this on Thursday in the US. Before he heads to Australia, he was ripping. And it's not a news flash that Hayden Deegan's going fast. Like that's pretty obvious. But I'm like on a technical level, he looked a lot better. Like when I watched him practice before, when I watched him race in Argentina, it was so. And I'm speaking on a relative basis. On a Hayden Deegan, incredibly gifted, one of the best riders I've ever seen level is what I'm judging off of. He was so prior. This video, and if you haven't seen it, Ed, go check it out when we get off the call. It's something else. Like he looks the part. Like I was impressed, and I was trying to be objective, and I was like, that's pretty good. Like that looks pretty good. So I kind of want to see how he stacks up against these guys after learning a lot. He's going to have his normal gate pick, and I think he's going to come back. I'm not saying he's going to win, but I think he's going to be much more in the fight than he was a couple weeks ago.
Oh, absolutely, mate. I'll go check that out once we finish this. And just any final thoughts from you the week ahead? The busy schedule keeps rolling. Lots happening with, the TV work, the fly work. It's certainly no rest for you, mate.
Yeah, I got to go. I have to get a little off-season work done myself. I'm going to get my knee cleaned up. Old racing injury, actually, that's been bothering me. So I'm going to kind of get in the lab and to get things cleaned up, just like all the athletes have to. So I'm not wimping around all season long. So I have that this coming Monday. And then, just really, we have our media days, December 8 or 9 through 11. So that'll be fun. We get to speak with all the riders. And then once we exit that, so it'll kind of be a whirlwind. We have our Thanksgiving holiday. I have surgery. We have media days. But coming out of that, man, it is a countdown until A1. It's a month out, But when you have Christmas, it really feels like the time flies by. So we're still a little less than 2 months, but I know how this goes, man. It's going to be here before we know it. And the great part of that is I can't wait. I'm excited for it already.
Yeah, it's all happening, isn't it, mate? All the best for the weekend, and hope the procedure goes well, mate. And we'll load up again next week and chat all things AUSX and WSX as well, mate. So thanks very much for joining us on this one again, mate. Obviously, massive shout out to Fly Racing and Firepower as well. So be sure to check them out online and on their socials to see why they're so highly regarded with all their offerings. All right, thanks again, JT. Been an awesome podcast, mate. Hope the fans enjoy this one as well, and we look forward to catching up next week.
Thanks, mate. Talk soon.
No worries, mate. Have a good one.